Good morning, Rabbi Isai. All right, Rabbi Isai, here we go. We are holding like 10 lines from the bottom of Lamed Gimelam's base to remind the oil what's going on over here. We're talking about people's hands. Chachamim instituted a special tumah on the hands, different than the whole body. Just the hands. The hands have, when we look at the chart of tumah, there's Avi Avois tumah, there's the highest, there's Avat tumah, there's Rishon Sheni. The hands are somewhere in the middle, very weak. It's a weak tumah. All the hands can do is that if it touches certain foods that are very, very susceptible to tumah, that have a very high sensitivity to tumah, then it will become tummy. It will make them a shlishi. A sheni can make something a shlishi. Could a sheni make a sheni? We'll see. It's possible according to a certain Manda Omar in a certain situation. Well, actually not. A sheni could make a sheni according to everybody in a certain way. So the problem that we had and we were dealing with yesterday, and that's all we're going to be dealing with today, is if your hands are a sheni, why does it seem from the Mishnah? The Mishnah says, Mamash, yesterday we shechted an animal and there's blood squirting everywhere. He came with a special bucket, or we did, I don't know, they put a bunch of clothing in there but there was blood like not shaykh. The Mishnah says if there's zero blood, then the meat is not susceptible to tumah. So if you touch it with your dirty, disgusting, shiny hands, nothing happened to the meat. Why? Because they didn't get any liquids. And if they didn't have any liquids, they're not susceptible to tumah. And what if they did have liquids? What if it did bleed like our animal yesterday? It bled. So if you touched it with your sheni hands, it would become tummy. How in the world? How does a sheni make something tummy? Asks the Gemara. What's the pshat? So the Gemara is going to introduce to us a new thing now. That's what's interesting about these sugyas. They're not difficult, but they're brand new to us. Things that we never heard about in our life. Here, there's a person who is wearing jeans and gym shoes, leilenu, and all he is a cucumber, but he pretends to be like a chashav kayan. He tries really hard to keep the halachas of truma on even fruit. He says this, which I personally took from my house, looks like it's on its way out, spoiling. It's probably sat in my house for 4 months in the sun. He takes this and he says, I'm treating this like truma. I don't have to. This is chulin. This is from the, nobody gave it to me. It wasn't mufresh. Nobody separated it as a truma and meiser. This I bought in the store. It's regular chulin. It's very mundane. Anybody could eat it. Yisrael could eat it. But I want to treat this as truma. Why? Because I'm a kohen. And as a kohen, I want everything in my house to be treated on the same level. I don't want any problems. I don't want anybody eating by mistake. One day my friend is going to give me a grapefruit, a truma grapefruit. I'm going to put it in the fridge and my wife is going to eat it. So I got to treat this with respect as truma. No truma, be careful, don't touch this. Don't do anything with this. There's a guy that takes it up another level. He treats meat as kachim, as if they just came off the mizbeach, as if they just came from the Beis Hamikdash. Every meat, all the meats in his freezer, all the stuff in his refrigerator, all the Benny's meat, all the Empire meat, all meat, kachim. Again, he's wearing jeans. He's trying to be kodesh, but he's chulin. He really is jeans. He really is regular mundane meat, but he's pretending, he's watching it with the chumras of kedusha. Oh, so basically we're talking about these two things, but more so this guy. Today we're going to be talking about him. It's a guy who is protecting his meat al taras hakodesh. So our Mishnah, I should have brought a piece of meat. That's what I really should have done. But our Mishnah is talking about this guy right over here. This is what we're talking about. He is pretending on chulin that it's kodesh. And therefore that explains the problem. What was the problem? If you have a sheni hand, Look at a sheni hand. It only has sheni tumah. A sheni tumah cannot make regular. And we're talking. We proved that our whole mission is talking about chulin. How do we prove it? Because it says in the Mishnah, chaya. There's wild beasts, antelope, deer. There's no antelope and deer. That's in the Mishnah, antelope and deer. But there's no antelope and deer in the Beis Hamikdash. So it can't be kachim. It must be regular venison that you buy in the store, that you get in a fancy restaurant. Deer. So the Gemara comes up with the chap. Reb Elazar Shaya says, we're talking about chulin. But we're talking about a guy that's very makpid on chulin. He treats the chulin like it's meat from the Beis Hamikdash. And if you take your sheni hand and you touch it, Chachamim are going to tell you that it becomes a shlishi. It actually does have an effect on this meat because you took it upon yourself. Not because in reality it's like that. Now, for Reb Viter, for Reb Mendy, and if you want to enjoy it also, I know Reb Mendy likes this, I'm just going to throw this out here for him. The whole sugi today we're talking about Chulin Ataris HaKodesh. There's one man, the Omer, that says that nothing happens. That if you treat something Ataris HaKodesh, there's zero tumah. I don't care that you treat it Ataris HaKodesh. In fact, if you treat it Ataris Truma, then it will make a difference. But to treat it so extreme, it's nothing. I don't care about that. There's no such thing as a person treating it like a carbon. There's many people, many kind of Reb Schoenberg included, who you go to his house, he treats all his fruit with Altaris Truma. Because he knows this. I mean, Danny also, I'm sure. I didn't ask him, but I'm assuming. Of course. So you see, I know my man. This yes, this not. That's the sheet to hear. That if you try to do something Altaris HaKodesh, you got nothing. V'loi na'aseh shlishi. But then you have three shitas that we're going to go see two of them today, I think. And it goes in levels, from worst to best. Well, or from best to worst. You see, it's green. Shlishi, they don't make a revi. They become a shlishi. If you treat your food with Taras HaKodesh, you make shlishi. And then you have somebody who says, no. It has the ability to give off tumah. It's so severe that it has the ability to give off tumah, a revi. And then there's somebody that says that if you touch this fruit with your sheni hands, this fruit will become a sheni, meaning it could make something else a shlishi. So you have all the way in the bottom, your second hand makes this meat a sheni. My sheni hand makes this a second, a sheni. And the Gemara is going to explain how in the world could usually you drop a level. No, it's so strong, it's so severe when I say that my fruit should be treated like kachim, that if my second touches this fruit, this meat becomes a sheni to the point that it can make something else a shlishi. And somebody says, no. A sheni drops down to a shlishi. And what does this do, a shlishi? It can make something else a revi. And then the guy second from top, v'loy mitan revi, meaning this becomes a shlishi, but that's it. It doesn't move. It becomes possible, but it doesn't give over to something else. Wow, 27 minutes into this year. Oh my Reb Elazar Rishaya. Oh my Reb Elazar Rishaya. We're talking about this piece of meat, not this. We're talking about a guy that's super makbid on his meat, that it should be like, it's chulin. He bought it in the store. He didn't get it from the Beis Hamikdash. He pretends that he got it from the Beis Hamikdash, and he's very careful not to touch it like you don't touch things from the Beis Hamikdash. And Memela what? His sheni hands, everybody together, his sheni hands, when they touch this becomes a shlishi. Would you like Rabbi Yeshua? It doesn't go like Rabbi Yeshua. The Sanya. And we're going to see on Omad Aleph, on Lamed Aleph, that there's a man that says it does go like Rabbi Yeshua. Why doesn't it go like Rabbi Yeshua? The Sanya. Lezoimer, ha'oichel oichel rishoin. There's something called tumas gvia, your body, the tum of your body. So if you eat, the first sheet is very, very simple. You are what you eat. You ever heard of such an expression? Yeah. So if you eat a Rishon, you become a Rishon, because you are what you eat. And if you eat a Sheni, Sheni. If you eat a Shlishi, Shlishi. So even though some of you don't have Nekudas, and this could be one of the most confusing sentences in Shas, you could read it, Rishon, Rishon, Sheni, Sheni, Shlishi, Shlishi, it could be a mess. But it goes like this, if you eat something that is on the level of Tumah of a Rishon, what do you become? Rishon, your body becomes a Rishon. If you eat something that's a Sheni, your body becomes a Sheni. And if you eat something that's a Shlishi, your body becomes a Shlishi. Reb Yeshua says, and the Gemara is going to rip him apart soon, Rishon, you're right. If you eat something, you drop down a level. So if you eat a Rishon, you become a Sheni. But he says, but also if you eat a Sheni, you become a Sheni. Huh? Does that make sense, or boy say? What should happen? If you eat a Sheni, you should become a Shlishi. But he doesn't say that. He says, V'Sheni Sheni. But here's even more confusing. He says if you eat a Shlishi, what happens if you eat a Shlishi? What should you become? A Revi. If you eat a Shlishi, you should become a Revi. But he doesn't say that. He says if you eat a Shlishi, you become a Sheni. You go up. If you eat a Rishon, again, if you eat a Rishon, you drop to a Sheni. If you eat a Sheni, you stay on the same level. If you eat a Shlishi, go up a level. What is going on here? And he says, Ve'ein Sheni L'Truma, that you don't become, referring to Truma, if you touch Truma, it doesn't become Tameh. And what are we talking about? What is the case? And he says, Mefurish, listen to this, and this is super important. Let's go back just one second before we read this line. We just established that our mission is talking about a guy who's keeping Taras HaKodesh. And he says, Bechulin Shenasu al Taras Truma. Very different. This guy. We're talking about a guy who keeps the halachas of Truma on all his food, which I could infer a simple diuk that it's not talking about this case. It's only talking about Truma. This case wouldn't work. This is zero. If a person accepts upon himself to keep Al Taras HaKodesh, it wouldn't do anything. Says the Gemara. Bechul Shenatz Al Taras Truma is the only person who is very machmer on his food, like Truma. Al Taras Truma in Al Taras HaKodesh loy. It doesn't work on Taras HaKodesh. And Memela what? Our Mishnah can't go like Reb Yeshua. We just established that our Mishnah is Al Taras HaKodesh, and he just said it's talking about Al Taras HaTruma, so it doesn't go according to Reb Yeshua. Taras HaKodesh Taras HaKodesh in, Taras HaKodesh loy. Why? Because Sava Chulin Shenas Al Taras HaKodesh less Shlishi. L'chayri holds that when you do it Al Taras HaKodesh, this guy, it's zero. It doesn't. Your sheni hand will not create a Shlishi. Ask the Gemara. Ask the Gemara a simple question. Why do you have to say that our Mishnah is not like Reb Yeshua? Say that it's Reb Yeshua. Who told you that the Mishnah is talking about a guy who's super makbid on his fruit, on his meat, that it should be kachim? Maybe he's talking about a person that's super makbid, that his fruit should be truma. And therefore, if I, with my second hand, my hands are seconds, there's sheni, I touch my fruit in my refrigerator, this will become a shlishi, even according to Reb Yeshua. So I could say that the Mishnah is talking about, according to Reb Yeshua, also according to Reb Yeshua. Belugla says the Gemara, Bechulin Shenas Al Taras Truma of Reb Yeshua. It goes like Reb Yeshua, and he's only makbid on Truma. Says the Gemara, no. No, that didn't even occur to me. Why? The Ktoni Basar. The Mishnah is talking about meat. Shchita, no blood. We're talking about meat. The Truma, what's Truma? Truma is only on your produce, on fruits and vegetables. That's it. It doesn't happen to meat. The Truma, Basar Mi'ika. It can't be a guy who's makbid on Truma Sakoidish, he says. So Elamai Bekachim. So what? You're so happy that the Mishnah is talking about kachim. But then you have another problem. Chai bekachim mi'ika. But there are no deer in the Beis HaMikdash. So why in the world would a person be makbid on a deer and say that it's super sensitive, like meat that came off the Mizbeach? But there is no deer in the Mizbeach. Says Gemara, you're right, there's no deer in the Mizbeach. But I have to be careful in my house for all meats. My wife when she goes and grabs a piece of steak out of the freezer, sometimes she grabs the deer steak instead of the buffalo steak. She doesn't see the difference. They look the same. If it's not packaged well and doesn't say exactly what it is, in the freezer it can get mixed up, in the refrigerator it can get mixed up. So Mela Kohanim, or whoever these people are, Kohanim usually, they're makbid on Taharas HaKodesh on even the deer meat. And that's why, even though it says in the Mishnah Chaya, it fits right in. There are people who makbid that all their meats should be, I'm going to watch them and treat them as kachim off the mizbeach, even on meat that doesn't apply to the mizbeach, because meat and meat could get confused. But to say that our mission is talking about kachim instead of truma, when people that are makbid, kohanim that are makbid to treat their fruits, their produce with the kedusha, they don't confuse that with meat. You don't confuse meat and a pickle. You confuse meat and meat. You confuse venison and beef, but you don't confuse a pickle with beef. So he holds our mission is only talking about fruits, not meat. So okay, so it can't be kosher. Omar Ula says Ula Chavaraya Amrin, my friend's Taina B'chulin Shenas Al Taharas HaKodesh, like we just said. That our mission is talking about this case. Guy who's makbid on his meat, that it should be kodesh. Ememela, your hands are sheni. Your hands touch that meat in the refrigerator. The meat becomes a shlishi. My friends say udaloik Reb Yeshua, like we just established. It can't be Reb Yeshua because Reb Yeshua says it's talking about that he's makbid on it like truma, not like kachim. I know Amina, but you should know Reb Yeshua, I hold that the Mishnah goes like Reb Yeshua. Well, wait a minute, we have a major problem. What do you mean I hold that it goes in Yeshua? We're saying that we established that the Mishnah is talking about Al Taharas HaKodesh. Rabbi Yeshua says Mufurish, we're talking about Taharas Truma. And we said, it means not Kodesh. No, you didn't understand him. He said, even a person who cares about Truma, but certainly a guy who cares about it like Kodesh, Kachim is much more sensitive than Truma. So if I say this, Truma guy, so certainly this. Not this and not this. He's not excluding Kodesh. He's saying even Truma, but certainly Kodesh. That's another way to look at it. Yeah? Certainly if a guy accepts upon himself to treat everything like kachim, then the chamir, this bushlishi, that if you touch it with your second sheni hand, then it becomes a shlishi. My chiddush is, when I said truma, I didn't mean only truma, I said even truma. We're going to have the Sfar on the base, it'll be a freebie. Now the Gemara just says something super interesting. Man Chavaraya, I want to figure out who's this friend of his. Who's the friend? Rav Avachanahi. We're going to prove that's Rav Avachana. How could I prove it? Rav Avachana, it's like a complicated raya to prove who the friend is. It goes to the bottom of the almond, literally. Maya Hadri Reb Eliezer Reb Yeshua lahadadi. But it's geschmack to understand the behind the scenes. What was going on between the two of them? They were arguing again. To remind the Olam, Reb Eliezer says that if I eat tumas gevia, it's a body tumah. If I eat a one, I become a one. It's what you are, what you eat. So I eat a sheni, I become a sheni. Shlishi. Rabbi Yeshua says it's impossible to understand, like even to remember what he says. He says if you eat a risha, you drop to a sheni. If you eat a sheni, you remain a sheni. If you eat a shlishi, you pop up to a sheni. What in the world is going on here? So he tells him, you can find in the Torah, and we had this a few times in the last few days, that the person eating the food is worse than the food itself. The tumah of his body is more sensitive than the tumah that comes off of food. Where do you see this? By a bird. Why? A bird, if you touch a bird, nothing. But if you eat the bird, you consume the bird, it goes into your body, the nevela, we're talking about a kosher bird that's a nevela, You touch an avela, usually there's tumah. You touch a dead cow, a dead sheep that wasn't shechted, you get tumas avela. But you touch a dead kosher bird, you don't get any tumah. But if you consume it, you eat it, then you get tameh. So you see that the person that eats it is more susceptible to tumah than the food itself. The guy eating is more chomer than the oichel, than the food. Memela what? Memela, if you eat a rishon, you should at least be a rishon. It should, you consuming it, your body should be it. If you touch a bird from the outside, a dead and available bird from the outside, you don't become tummy. And if somebody shoves it in your mouth, you didn't even touch it. It becomes so severe the tumah that it even makes your clothes tummy. So at least if you eat a rishon, you should for sure be a rishon. Yeshua says, and I understand Yeshua completely. Yeshua, how could you learn from an avail of a bird that a lot of us just a few days ago didn't even know this halacha existed? That if you touch a dead nevela bird, you don't become tameh. Only if you put it in the back of your mouth. That's a big chiddush. The chiddush, it's a one-time thing in the Torah. But what? Yes, I could prove to you. No, the opposite. The food is worse than the guy that eats it. Food is more chomer. How do I see that? That a piece of this fruit, how big does this fruit have to be in order to receive tumah from a dead rat? 1 egg. 1 beitza. Yet, a person eating tumah only becomes tameh after he eats 2 eggs. So memela what? What do you see? That the person eating is less susceptible than food itself. Food itself is 1 kibetza. The person eating it is 2 kibetza. You have to eat at least to have a pras. The shear of the food becoming tameh is 1 egg. The shear of you becoming tameh by eating is 2 eggs. So you see that a person is less susceptible than the actual food. If a person is less susceptible to food, so what happens? Memela what? It says Rabbi Yeshua, if you eat a rishon, what happens? You drop down. Your body drops down a level because your body is less than the food. So if you eat food that's a 1, your body becomes a 2 because you become less. So what's the problem with that? The problem with that is 2 problems. Then what happens when you eat a second? When you eat a sheni, what should happen? According to this, you should drop down to become a shlishi. So why in the world did you remain a sheni? Blazer, Blazer says you can't bring any proof from how many eggs you have to eat in order to become tameh, and how many eggs, because there's different shiurim have different things. There's different reasons behind the shiurim. It's nothing to do with how tameh they are and how not tameh they are. It's how much fits in your mouth, etc. But the point is not how much tumah it gives off. So don't bring me right, here's 1 egg, here's 2 eggs. I don't understand you, Rabbi Yeshua. When you said that it should drop down according to your svara, why should it drop down? Because a person eating it, his body has less susceptibility to tumah. So when you eat a 1, you turn into a 2. That makes so much sense. But sheni lama. If you eat a sheni, your body should drop down to a shlishi. So why in the world do you say that if you eat a sheni, you remain a sheni? All of a sudden you are what you eat. Amar loy. Check this out. This is mamish beautiful. I have water over here, and I have 2 fruits. Let's say this fruit is a sheni fruit. This is a sheni fruit. If this sheni fruit touches this fruit, if this is kachin, let's say, this will become a shlishi. Check this out. If I pour water on this, like this, so we'll just have the water here. The water is on this fruit. This water becomes a rishon. You hear what's going on here? It climbs up 1 madrega. Here. This water becomes a rishon. So now I have rishon water. How did this water become rishon? Because it touched the sheni. And it goes up. Midrabanan goes up to rishon. So now I take this fruit and I touch this water what happens to it? Comes a sheni. So I have a way that a sheni makes a sheni. And that's why I say that a sheni becomes a sheni. You hear what's going on here? You're asking me, Reb Yeshua, well, how does a sheni make a sheni? It should drop down. Yeah, but I have something, I have a bridge that I can make a sheni into a sheni through touching water. The snan. Oh. So the question is, so let's just read this. So this we saw. This sheni fruit can make this fruit a sheni. So that's why I say that a sheni becomes a sheni. Wait a minute. You're making the person who touches it, you're making it a sheni. You're making this, you're saying that if a person touches with the sheni hands, the fruit should become a sheni. But guess what? The bridge in between, you forgot about the bridge in between. Let's remove this fruit for a second. There's a rishon here. So maybe if I touch this fruit, the fruit should become a rishon. Why do you say it should become a sheni? You're saying, oh, if there's another step, the fruit that touches the water becomes a sheni. But even before that, it becomes a rishon. So make it even worse. Say if a guy with his sheni hands touches something, it should become a rishon, not a sheni. The water becomes a rishon. Anything that's a sheni that makes a truma puzzle. It makes the water becomes the liquid becomes a rishon, a tchila. Besides, yeah, do I need to show this again? A tul yoim is a person who's tamei, who touched tuma. He goes to the mikvah. And the day that he goes to the mikvah, it becomes quasi-tar. He's in between. If he touches truma, the truma will become pasul. But if he touches this water, it won't become pasul. He's a tzvul yom. Besides, it's tzvul yom that touches this. He touches the sheretz, it becomes a rishon. He himself becomes a rishon. He has to go to the mikvah. He goes to the mikvah, but he's not tar until nightfall. So in between mikvah and nightfall, what is he? He's a full yom. He's in between status. This is new for today. He's full yom. He waits there until he's purple. He's not a red tamei, and then when it becomes night, he becomes green. It becomes tar. So even if it's full yom, if a full yom touches this water, it doesn't become tamei. It doesn't make the water rishon. Right. Void. And here's the bigger problem. What did Reb Yeshua say? That a person with shlishi hands, I'm sorry, not a person with shlishi hands. If you eat a sheni, you become a shlishi. Shlishi, sheni lama. How does it go? If you eat a shlishi, you become a sheni. How is it possible that you go up a madrega? Oh my Lord. So Yeshua tells him, he says, I was only talking about a person who keeps this guy right over here. I'm sorry, wrong one. So now we're going back to this. A guy who's keeping taras truma. He only keeps taras truma. Yeah, this guy. Ani lo marti, only somebody that does this, not this. Only a person who keeps. Get this out of the way, not to confuse the Olam. Okay. That what? When did I say that a shlishi jumps up to a sheni? When a person is watching all his fruit in his house on the highest levels of truma, not kodesh, truma only. Why is that? And I'm going to give you the reasoning. Shetaharasa tumahi etzel kodesh. I'm going to treat. Because when it comes to kodesh, I'm going to treat, even if you watch yourself, you were very, very careful and treated it like truma, because I'm a big tzaddik, I'm treating my fruit like truma. Guess what? But when it comes to kashim, it's a zero. I'm going to treat it like tamei. Memela. A shlishi, your shlishi, I'm going to treat it so bad that it's going to go up in madrega to sheni. So nachamo. So if we go through the whole sugya again, we're wrapping, this is it. Right here, it's the end of this. And then from here, it's easy. Just to wrap it up. What does Reb Yeshua hold? We're not talking about this guy. We had a shaila. Are we talking about that he mentioned truma, that he keeps truma, and certainly this? That was one svar. No. Rabbi Shua says mefurish now. I'm talking about this and this only. He keeps truma and he doesn't keep kodesh. And in fact, if he keeps truma, we're going to treat it. When it comes to kachim, we're going to treat him like a oisvarf, like a nothing, like he's tummy. It's tummy. If you have a third hand, you're going to become a sheni hand. So in Mela, Rabbi Shua can't go like our Mishnah. We said our Mishnah says talking about what? Taras HaKodesh. This guy. He says no. I don't hold like Taras HaKodesh. I hold Taras HaKodesh. No. So in Mela, now I know who it is. It's Rav Arachana that said this whole shtick. The whole back and forth between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. And finally, Rabbi Yeshua says his reason. And he says in the beginning when I said Al Taras HaTrum, I meant it. That's it. So who said it? Rav Arachana. Omer Reb Zeira, Omer Reb Asi, Omer Reb Yochanan, Omer Reb Yanai. Hoichel Shlishi Shel Chulin Shenasu Al Taras HaKodesh. Oh, so now we're going back to this list, yeah? Let's see where he fits in on this list. Hoichel Shlishi Shel Chulin. If a person eats a third, number 3 in Chulin, that is very, very weak tum of Chulin. Shlishi Shel Chulin Shenasu Al Taras HaKodesh, but he treated it with all like it's kodesh, like it's a carbon. Nase gufoi sheni l'kodesh. His body becomes a sheni. Memela what? He makes a shlishi. His body, if he eats a shlishi, his body goes up a level. Eisvir b'zeri l'rasi. So he asks the question: shlishi sheni l'kodesh. Vein sheni l'trumo. If you eat a shlishi, consume a shlishi, you go up to a sheni. Vein sheni l'trumo. And what is it talking about? The chum shenas al taras HaKodesh is only talking about when the person accepts him by himself. Taras truma, sorry. Only truma. Al taras truma in, al taras HaKodesh loy. It's this side, my left, your right. Not the kodesh. It's the truma. How did you just tell me al taras HaKodesh? Al taras truma in, al taras HaKodesh loy. So this is the teretz we had in Amar Aleph, Amar Lei, Amar. When I said Al Taras HaTruma, it means even Truma. Truma is a lesser chumrah than Kodesh. Kodesh is much more sensitive. Amar Lei, it's not only Truma, it's even Truma. The two of them. It doesn't matter which one, but even Truma. The Truma is the much lesser one. It's less susceptible to tumah. Of course, the kodesh you treat it like a carbon, which is the highest level of kedusha besides the par aduma. So says the Gemara, or maybe that was wrong with what I just said, but you know what I'm talking about. In terms of susceptibility to tumah. But the Gemara says, wait a minute, that's a great teretz. But va'afani lo yamarti ella betruma. He says before, only truma, not kachim. So the Gemara says, who said he said it? One man Dharma says that he said it like that. The other man Dharma says he didn't say those words. Amaroi ninu. We can continue for a minute, no? Let's just continue 1 minute. Omarula. If a person eats a third level of chulin, a third level of tumah, shenas al taras truma. He treated it with respect of truma. Nifsal gufoi melecho b'truma. So his body becomes a shlishi, but it cannot continue on. His body is not allowed to eat truma, but it doesn't give off tumah anymore. It becomes pasul. Pasul means it stops right there. Micah Mashmalan, but what's the big chiddush? Tanino, we learned. Shlishi, if a person eats a shlishi, he eats a shlishi, sheni, he becomes a sheni l'kodesh and sheni l'truma. You don't go down a level to truma. And it's talking about when he respected it like truma. Sheni l'havi shlishi havi. It seems like his body does become pasul. He's not allowed to eat any more truma. What does it mean his body becomes possible? He's not allowed to eat truma. So it says, so what is he mechavish? Doesn't it say this? It says, no. It's not 100%. It doesn't say before that you become a shlishi. I would say he's not a sheni, not a shlishi. Rabbi Isai, I just want to point out something. Chulin went smooth like anything, yishmak like anything for 30 days straight. 30 days straight. Every mesechta is going to have a daf here and there that you don't appreciate, you don't understand, and you don't like. This is Daf Yomi, and we go weiter. It's not a time to get discouraged there. Oh, So why do you say sheni? It's not sheni means only a sheni not, but not a shlishi. No, both. It's sheni and shlishi that you don't become. So why do you just use the word sheni? Because it works well in the words. Since he used the word sheni, when it comes to kodesh, I would think that. But a shlishi also, Kamash will know that he does become a shlishi. Your body becomes a shlishi l'truma. In other words, you're not allowed to eat truma anymore. A boy side, have a wonderful day.
Merit the zchus of spreading Torah throughout the world. Sponsor a shiur today. MDYsponsor.com or sponsor at MDYDaf.com.